It's Kristi. Welcome to my September Hangout on the 1st of October, for which I apologize, but we usually do them on a Sunday, so to keep with that pattern, we're doing the September one in October. And also, I'll just say upfront, first, this is for my patrons, those of you who make a contribution. Oh, I've got sound coming up for some reason. And point that off. I never usually do that, and of course, this is the one time where I'm looking at the chat, and I do exactly what everyone else does, which is forget that they've got the screen open in another window. All right, so we do these once a month for people who make a financial contribution to support my channel, and I thank each and every one of you who do that, because it's helped me improve my equipment and become a much better YouTuber to give you better content. So thanks to the people in the Hangout and to those of you who support me but don't come to the Hangouts. And another thing too is, this channel is about not just discussing things but activism. And if one of the ways that I show my activism is we take 20 cents of every dollar that people provide to my Patron account, and and I donate it to a progressive cause. Now, the month of September kind of got away from me, so we were going to do the Heather Heyer Memorial Fund, and what I'll do, because I haven't had a chance to make that donation yet, is we're going to have a Hangout again in about 2 weeks, I'd say. I'm going to see if it works for everyone, and I'll do the show you guys the receipt for that donation in the October Hangout, and also we'll do a vote for the October candidates in that Hangout as well, because this Hangout is really going to focus on the aftermath of the MythCon conference in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So before I hand this over to my patrons, a little background. For those of you who haven't been following everything closely, I learned in August that Sargon of Akkad was going to be attending MythCon in Milwaukee as a speaker. He was billed as a sort of skeptic and provocateur, and he was going to be interviewed by Thomas Smith. The two other people who were invited were Armored Skeptic and Shoeonhead, and people have objected to their appearance and had some criticisms about their expertise and their behavior online in terms of representing skepticism to a mass audience in the United States, but it wasn't my focus. My focus was on the man who went on a live Hangout to laugh at the murder of my friend, and the guy who has harassed me online, has harassed my friends online, and who admitted to organizing a trolling campaign of a member of parliament with the phrase, "I wouldn't even rape you." Now, there was a lot of attention brought to Carl's bad behavior. I documented it through blogs on Acadian Times and shared that with the MythCon organizers, and shared it with I wrote an email, which I've published. It's available on Twitter. Conference venue, hey, this guy's coming to your event or coming to your location, and he's got this background. Here are all the links, things that he's done in the past. I think you should know about this. And that's what it says in the email. You can go and read it for yourself. And so there was a lot of attention and a lot of controversy around this conference. The last few days I've put up a mirror of a podcast on my channel, which is Callie of the Gaytheist Manifesto talking to Brian and Sean, who are the organizers of MythCon 2017. And in that Hangout, they defend their choice to bring on someone who is a known abuser, an online harasser, to their conference and putting him on stage because they said he was an entertainer. Apparently, they think that tweeting and leading your followers to harass a sexual assault survivor, I should say, with the phrase, "I wouldn't even rape you," is entertainment. And they were very much on the position that they made the right decision and that they were sticking by it. Friday was the day before the conference, and I had pretty much thought that I had brought the attention that I had wanted to bring to the conference. Seth Andrews pulled out when he learned about Sargon's behavior in the past, as well as his objections to Shoeonhead and Armored Skeptic. Aaron Raw, also, who Sargon had made a video attacking him, he withdrew from the conference. But on Friday, Danny, whose channel is here on YouTube, circulated a picture of a pinned tweet, that had been pinned to the front page of the Mythicist Milwaukee Twitter feed, where they were proudly announcing that Amos Yee, who had been just given asylum in the United States because of fear of religious persecution in his home country, was going to be attending MythCon. And they had pictures of him. They were tweeting, and they were very proud of the fact that he was going to be attending their conference. And Danny Kaye pointed out that this is the same Amos Yee who, in July of 2016, 15 months ago or so, had said that if children consent to sex, then it's not sexual abuse. And he made comments about child pornography not being a problem. And I was shocked. Now, I don't know the timeline of who picked up on this, but I certainly tweeted at Mythicist Milwaukee asking them for comment on these statements by Yee in the past and whether or not they agree with them, because they were putting his picture up on their Twitter feed. Well, Godless Engineer jumped on it because Mythicist Milwaukee has never replied to my tweets. Godless Engineer has always served as their proxy, and he will come in and he will call me names and he will attack me. But the Mythicist Milwaukee Twitter handle has never replied or contacted me about any of the things that I've asked them about since August. So he jumped in, accused me of spreading propaganda because he asserted that Yee had retracted those statements. And I asked to see where those retractions where were those retractions? And he told me that they were on Twitter, but then they had been deleted, so he didn't have them. And I queried this because I know YouTube, and when people do apologies or retractions, people comment on the apology and retractions. And all of the information that I was able to find never mentioned a retraction. Well, eventually Godless Engineer admitted that someone on a phone call with Yee had told him that it had been retracted and that Yee was drafting a statement. And so basically he didn't have any information that Yee had retracted his statement. Then Mythicist Milwaukee put out a statement saying that Yee had retracted them in the past and he had made them when he was a minor. But shortly thereafter, they posted a message saying that they had spoken with Yee and he had not retracted the statements. He was not going to retract his statements about having sex with children and child pornography. And as a consequence, Mythicist Milwaukee had decided, well, he wasn't going to be speaking. He was going to be appearing at their conference and, like being a special guest. Not only was that not happening anymore, he was barred from entering the conference. They were going to exclude him from even attending, showing up in person at their conference. So that was a big 180 in the space of about 6 hours. Apparently, just as a follow-up to that, Yee attended the conference and ended up being escorted out because, according to someone on Twitter who asked him, he wasn't informed that he was not no longer allowed to attend. So that happened just before the conference kicked off. And then the conference happened. Now, Mythicist Milwaukee didn't live stream it. What they did was apparently recorded it, and they're going to be selling the web stream. They're going to be selling access to it in some format in the future. But people in the audience were allowed to take clips of up to 1 minute. They did provide permission for attendees to do that. And from that, we've seen little bits of clips here and there. If you've been on my Twitter feed, or if you've checked the card that I've linked, you'll see the clip where Thomas, Thomas Smith and Sargon, when they got on stage, Thomas asked Carl about the tweet, and when Thomas said the phrase, "I wouldn't even rape you," you hear a mix of intakes of breath, as if some people are just reacting in absolute stunned shock at the idea of tweeting that at a survivor of sexual assault, and then there's a massive cheer that goes up from the crowd of Sargon supporters, and he smiles and points at his cheering section from the stage. And Thomas tries to argue that it's disgusting to say that to somebody who has survived an attack, and that he is sending a message to women that basically using rape to menace women is acceptable, and that shouldn't be acceptable. There's also a clip, if you watch on Michael Rowland's channel, the minute after that from somebody else, so you can kind of put those two clips together and see a slightly longer version of it. But this has been a shit show. It's divided the community, and there were a lot of people who didn't understand what they were going into. I saw people tweeting in the Twitter feed that they were disgusted with MythCon, that they wouldn't be attending another Mythicist Milwaukee conference. And this has kind of exposed to me the problem with allowing alt-right and alt-light types to operate freely within the atheist movement without more resistance, with more discussion about why having a debate, why platforming a guy who's going to defend tweeting out, "I wouldn't even rape you" at a skeptic conference is not a good look for the skeptic community. And this is not the direction I want to see the movement going in. That hence my activism on this issue and bringing attention to Sargon and what he was like, because as we saw from the audience's reaction, MythCon got exactly the kind of entertainment that they were looking for. And just before I hand it over to people to talk about their reactions, I would just say that I would strongly encourage everyone who stands against sexual assault and stands against rape, or using rape or threats of sexual assault to menace people, to boycott all future MythCon conferences until there's a change of leadership that agrees with you. Right, so now I will hand it over to my guests. So who would like to speak first on this topic? I don't know, maybe I'll just go in order. I see Tom. So Tom, you tried to contact Mythicist Milwaukee back in August, and they basically said, we're not changing our platform. So do you want to talk a little bit about your reactions and your read of the events from the outside?
Shit show.
That was easy.
Well, I think you laid it out pretty well what the problems were with, at least from the Sargon point of view. I'm not sure. I got so many notes. I'm not sure where to start. Yeah, I supported you and and the efforts to inform MythCon what the hell was going on, and ask what they were doing if they knew what they were doing. And it sounded like they were taking all this in. Well, they weren't taking it in. They were being defensive. And then I found it interesting with this Amos Yee thing. When they waffled back and forth about it, and then they decided that they were, they decided they weren't going to have him because he really hadn't retracted his child sexual deviancy, I guess, or his child sexual opinions. And they would have known that had they done the research, but they didn't. And they actually said, we did listen to the people who were telling us that Amos Yee was a problem, and we did listen to that, and we did something about it, which was in stark contrast to what they said about what they were going to, what people were saying about Sargon, or Carl, which is essentially the same sort of thing, that he was an abuser, that he was not a skeptic in any useful sense. He was not a deep thinker or somebody who would be a good representative for the movement. And they did not take that on board. And Aaron Ra left, Seth Andrews left. And a number of people decided not to go to the conference because they had 1,400 tickets available, and they said as of Thursday or Friday that they sold 400.
Yeah, that's what they said in the podcast.
Yeah, so they were saying, this is the way forward. Atheist conferences are losing attendance. We need to try a new model, and this is the new model. And it looks like the new model is failing a whole lot harder than the old model. But the thing is that they listen to someone about child sexual abuse, but they didn't listen to, to pedophilia, but they didn't listen to anybody about abuse of women, about abuse of smaller channels, abuse of social justice advocates. All this stuff didn't faze them. And they knew about it just as much as they knew about, at the end, about Amos Yee. And I think that tells you where they're at. And with that, let the conversation continue. As I say, I have notes from several podcasts that I listened to this morning, and some things from earlier that I watched and listened to that may fit in at another point in the discussion.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm going to go to some random guy next. But before I do, I think that this is actually an incredibly important conversation that we need to be having. I mentioned in another Hangout my perception of first and second wave atheism in the US and the sort of more old school first wave atheist guys who are at the top, the leadership now, and are sort of the spokesmen for the organization or for the movement. But there's a newer generation coming up, and a significant part is being cultivated in the shitlord community. And they aren't really interested in mirroring Hitchens. They aren't interested in understanding the philosophical concept of skepticism. They're not interested in really understanding logic, although they throw the word around a lot. What they tend to do is be arguing for the status quo, as if the status quo is the most sensible thing ever and everyone else is just complaining. So with that sort of reflection on why this is an important conversation to have for U.S. atheism going forward, I'll then kick it over to some random guy.
Thank you, Kristi. But first of all, I am some random geek. I am a big geek, and I'll prove that with my...
Yes, geek. This is it. It kind of fades out, so thank you for correcting me. Geek. You're a geek. Okay. You geek. Geek.
I have my Tiger or Bunny glass like here that has a alcoholic beverage because... Like what the Bronx Bombers said on your postmodern Hangout, if you're going to talk about politics, might as well get a little drunk. A little. So anyway, Mythicist Milwaukee, my thoughts on this. Thoughts on Sargon. What more to add? It is a shit show. It was like surprising that they wanted to like invite Amos Yee. I remember hearing about that, and it was like, wait, what? Wait a minute, I heard that name before. When did I heard that name? Wait, didn't Sean mention Amos Yee and his views about child pornography and pedophilia before? Yes, Sean mentioned that in his Crowd video. That Crowd and T, I believe, was friends with Amos Yee and still remain friends. And correct me if I'm wrong, but also like Sargon also had a chat with like Amos Yee, I believe. I could be wrong, but yeah.
I think it was before his comments, but he was pretty. But yeah, he was on Sargon's channel too.
That Sargon also had David Sereni on his channel and Millennium Wells, so it's kind of not surprising. But yeah, people apparently they didn't know, and like the godless engineer just took it on faith without evidence that no, he retracted his statements because I heard it from a third party, a trusted source, and I saw that certified that Peter Coffin tweeted out this morning. And at least Mrs. Milwaukee finally had a line. The line is child pornography or advocates for child pornography or pedophilia, which is the same reason that Milo Yiannopoulos got kicked out of the right and got fall from grace and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, so so they say we're not okay with child pornography or pedophilia, but we're okay with racism, sexism, and misogyny. It's like, so wait, you're okay with all those other things? So yeah. If this was just a conference that had Armor Skeptic and Sean had at the skeptics community is like, there's videos proving that they're not very skeptical, and I don't think they very rational would do much research and misrepresents a lot of information, casual racism and bigotry in that. But like, we wouldn't to complain so much about it. Some people would complain about it. Some people would maybe like inform the conference like, these are the kind of people you're having. But Sargon was like but Carl Benjamin was the biggest like, what are you doing? Don't give this guy a platform. And yeah, so that's my thoughts.
Right, and it's worth noting that somebody that I know put on the social media when she, as a rape survivor, watched that video, it actually made her break down and cry, watching people cheer. A man tweeting to a woman, "I wouldn't even rape you," that getting applause and cheers. And I just think about every victim of rape in that room and how they must have felt sitting, listening to that. And it didn't seem to occur to the guys at Mythicist Milwaukee that was the atmosphere that they were inviting and defending when they were going to bring Carl as their guest. The other thing too, if I can say, as long as I've got it, as long as I have the mic and I'm thinking about it, Mythicist Milwaukee put Thomas Smith in a terrible position. And I don't think anyone's criticized them for this, and I think they deserve a massive amount of criticism. When they organized the conference and they billed it, it was meant to be an interview, right? It was Dave Rubin who was initially invited, and he ended up pulling out, and so they brought Thomas Smith in. And it was supposed to be an interview. And when they started to get criticism of Sargon, they put the onus, like, well, it's going to be Thomas who's going to be challenging him. Well, then that's no longer an interview, that's a debate. But they didn't put in a moderator for the debate. They wanted Thomas to play the role of moderator and also to be a person who is arguing as well as managing the flow of the conversation. So they basically put him in an awful position and didn't give him enough support or backup or change the structure of the interaction enough, because Carl could, sort of sit back and let his audience take over, and it was up to Tom to try to control the room that was already hostile to him. If they had a moderator who was neutral, that would have been a much better situation. So Thomas was treated terribly by the organizers, and I think he has every right to be upset with the way that they have treated him, and well, at least the way that they handled this situation of basically changing the expectations and making him be the person who has to defend, or who has to, sort of debate Carl, but also interview him. It just seemed to me to be ridiculous. But next up in my list is Matthew. So Matthew, your thoughts. Have you been following any of this? Do you know much of what's going on?
I've been following you on this. And I saw Callie Wright's video, or Callie Wright's interview yesterday. So I got a little bit of behind the scenes from that. And from what it sounds like, it just sounds like a mishmash of inconsistencies as far as what they feel about one person versus another person, because they, as we've already mentioned, Sargon versus Amos Yee, and then during that Callie Wright interview, they kept pitting him against Eli Bosnick, who I think is a very different person compared to Sargon. What little I know about both of them, because at least Eli is one who's willing to talk to people and apologize when he's done something wrong. I haven't seen evidence of that from Sargon. So it seems like they're trying to grasp at more attendees, but are going about it exactly the wrong way. At least that's what it feels like to me at this point. That I don't really have much else I can contribute, but it seems like a wacky situation. They're going away from their base of atheism, but what do I know as far as what they're trying to do, where their goal is, and what really are they trying to get out of this?
I think that's a point that I would also like to echo, because, I'm acquainted with Eli. We've communicated in Hangouts and on Twitter and Facebook, and he is such a sincere person and honestly wants people to feel welcome. And he's the kind of person who has, in the past, he described on a Hangout that I did with him, someone was tweeting at him sort of almost anti-Semitic stuff, claiming he was like a neo-Nazi or whatever. And Eli, like, do you want to get on a Skype? Because for him, he's like, what is your day like? And in the Skype call, they started talking about magic, because the guy was really into magic and they did their favorite magicians. And so when it comes to engaging with people, the idea that you can compare Eli and Carl, I found really offensive, and I was very happy with the way that Callie pushed back on that and called it out as being an offensive comparison. And yeah, the Mythicist Milwaukee guys have really done a good job of burning a lot of bridges in the course of this conference and throwing Eli Bosnick under the bus in order to save Carl Benjamin. I think for people who know, like have listened to the Gamcast and followed Scathing Atheist and Skeptocrat and understand his heart, that was fighting words. There's a lot of people I think they alienated with their actions on that. Mariana, from an outsider's also another, you and I in Germany, looking at all this shit show going on in the US.
You said before that Dave Rubin was supposed to interview Sargon, right?
Yep. Yeah, and he couldn't do it because of commitment clashes or scheduling issue or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, the same Rubin who said Jesus knew a lot of Muslims because he lived in the Near East.
Well, we know that Mythicist Milwaukee don't really have a standard for skepticism. It's just how big is your audience, That's the real criteria. It's the ad populum criteria.
Yeah, I mean, Sargon is on record saying, I don't know and I don't care, which is the embodiment of apathy and ignorance. He's completely intellectually bankrupt, doesn't know anything about anything, and basically he's a useful idiot for a lot of awful people. I have no clue if he believes the stuff he says. And I think the only reason the MythCon organizers disinvited Amos Yee was because they know that pedophilia is a hard line for, let's say, 95% of the population. But misogyny, rape advocacy, rape apologia, and the stuff, well, that's just women. Who cares about women? And then they wonder why nobody wanted to go to the con. Well, I'm not sorry for them. They made the bed, now they have to lie in it. And if you lie down with dogs, you wake up with fleas. And I hope they get sucked dry by all the fleas they picked up from Sargon and the other internet shitlords that they hosted. Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, thanks. And I'm going to go by your screen name. So yeah, Leto. Sorry, I forgot to put the link in the patrons thing. I've been running around trying to keep up with the stuff on Twitter, and my bad.
Hi, it's okay.
Hello.
I'd like to talk about the not Sargon because he's a shitlord. It's a given. There's not a lot I can add to what you all said, but I wanted to talk about the people who are defending him, because it's really worrying. This morning I watched the video Michael Rowlands made, and there was a guy in the comments who I think is very representative of Sargons, and they're really dishonest. That even in the sentence always gets forgotten because reasons. And those people are numerous. And I don't know, I find it pretty worrying. That guy is being cheered. And a lot of people don't see what the problem with that is. And yeah. I'm struggling with my words today. Sorry. yeah, this goes to prove that atheism isn't a proof that someone is rational.
Yeah.
That's not really what I wanted to say, but I'm going to struggle with my words, so I'd rather simplify it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm done.
Okay. No, I think that's an excellent point, because even though obviously the focus is on Carl and his behavior, you look at the kinds of people he's attracts and he's attracting to him, and the kind of attitudes that they are reinforcing and spreading when new people come in and get exposed to them and then take his side or see things from his perspective. And yeah, there's a lot of people who are deliberately changing the facts. He said, "I wouldn't even rape you, Jess Phillips." He didn't say, "I wouldn't rape you." He used the even deliberately. In fact, 6 months ago in the Thinkery, he posted another video that included Jess Phillips, and it's called "I Wouldn't Even." Carl knows what he said. He picked those words deliberately. And people who are trying to slide "I wouldn't even rape you," which either means she's beneath him, she's so disgusting he wouldn't even be bothered to rape her, or that she doesn't deserve, like, just it's meant to be contemptible. It's meant to be sexually menacing. It's meant to hold rape over her head. And when people tweet it at me, that's what they want to do. They want to be able to use the menace of rape and then deny that that's what they're doing. And that's why he worded it the way he did. That's why he didn't say, "I wouldn't rape you," because that's not what he meant. He meant he wouldn't even rape her. And that's how he meant it. And his followers who excuse it and lie for him really need to get called out and checked and rejected as part of the skeptic movement, because that's not skepticism, that's propaganda. And this is my problem with, again, there's more reasons, but these people don't have a commitment to the facts. So why are we putting them up on stage at a skeptic community event and calling them skeptics? That's not what I want as my spokesperson, any more than I want Donald Trump to represent me as an American. And I speak up and I speak out against Donald Trump, and I'm going to speak up and I'm going to speak out against conferences that try to legitimize Carl. I mean, it's not acceptable. We're not going to expand skepticism and atheism in the United States by telling people we wouldn't even rape them. Right? So you're basically asking here, do you want the Rush Limbaugh of YouTube atheism to be the face of American atheism? Because there's a lot of parallels there. Not the Oxycontin use, obviously. But I think the next person in my list, and Xavier, how you doing?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. I'm doing all right. A lot of what I would have said has already been brought up, so I don't want to repeat that, but I don't know if people here know how much of a pain in the ass it is to actually do secular activism in America. And things like Mythicist Milwaukee, even though it's not very well known, are kind of helping damage it, because they are doing basically, this has been brought up, they're associating things like secularism and skepticism and atheism with people like Carl Benjamin and Siobhan Head, I don't know her real name, and Greg. And it doesn't make it easy, because what people try to do to discredit other people, especially in politics, is a lot of guilt by association and a lot of misrepresenting of ideas. And when you put these people up on pedestals, this gives ammunition to people to basically craft a narrative that leaves out just enough where people that might have, instead of supporting anti-secularist positions, did I word that wrong? Might have, instead of supporting a secular position, will start supporting anti-secular positions. So, in essence, though it probably made them a buck or two, they have, if word of this gets out and people that are, say, popular start becoming associated with this conference, there is going to be quite a large problem when it comes to secular activism. Maybe not quite a large problem, but at least a very large annoyance.
Right. I mean, how are we supposed to be, as atheists, go out and have credibility talking about the problems with rape in the Bible? And they'll turn around and say, yeah, but Sargon tells women they wouldn't even rape them. So why, where is your rape standard here?
That's another problem I have with like this whole conference and secularism and atheists, and these people who are saying that they're atheists and stuff like that. And I don't want to be associated with these people. These people are assholes, and Carl Benjamin's a harasser, and I don't want to call myself an atheist because of that. And my younger brother said, "Oh, come on, you can't just like not call yourself something just because of like the negative stigma associated with the word and something like that is all made up." And it's like in his mind, and so, but no, that people's reaction to this and to the "I wouldn't rape you" and Carl calling himself an atheist or a secularist if he does, and it kind of does taint the word. And so I'd rather like find another word to describe my as Gnosticism and non-theism or secularism. Actually, that's a better one. And then to be associated with like T.J. Kirk and the white rationals and Carl and stuff like that. And that's also why I kind of don't like the word gamer, even though I have over 1,000 video games. So because of the negative association to that some people say it's not real, but yeah.
Yeah, this is so we're going to go more of a free-for-all, so if you guys want to take your mic off and just jump in. But yeah, just on the record, I want to formally state, and everyone can go through my Twitter feed and read every tweet I sent to Mythicist Milwaukee at their hashtag and at their group account, at the Mythicist Milwaukee account. So the guys on the podcast, I think they also said this on the Bearings as well, when they went on Bully Bearing channel to promote their conference, that they had received like harassing stuff, and that one of the organizer's wife had been sort of moved to tears over it. And I am completely open with my record. I indicated their hashtag because that's the hashtag that they assigned to the conference, and I figured they were watching, and I wanted to bring attention to Carl's past behavior. I occasionally tweeted at Mythicist Milwaukee, but I didn't. They basically have, like I said, have never responded to me, so I tend to use the hashtag. So the idea that, I can't say that I've seen every single tweet. I asked Dan Arrow about this. He didn't know what I was talking about in terms of, communicating online. It's been to the hashtag. It's been to the at Mythicist Milwaukee. I didn't even know Brian and Sean were the organizers until they started appearing on podcasts. So this idea, I mean, if they have proof, they have evidence that they want to push or put out here in terms of showing DMs that they got from people or tweets to their personal account or anything that they think that I said, because like I said, you can see my tweets. I was always polite. Yeah, and if they're not going to provide that kind of evidence, then I think they should really be careful about making those accusations, because people like Sargoons will take that and start applying it to individuals, because they didn't name any names. They just said these people, and now I'm being accused of it. And this is a kind of bullshit that happens when you bring Sargoons into a conference. It just creates more strife, because that's how Carl makes his money, off of drama and conflict. So the chat is now wide open. Does anybody want to reply to that or start a new conversation?
I mentioned I have notes. I want to talk about one of my notes, and that's I listened to the science. Sorry, the Science Enthusiast podcast.
I'm sorry, I just love Tom saying "fuck" on air.
That is funny to me too.
Why is that?
I don't know, because
you old?
No, it was just how you did it. You're like, fuck.
I love you, Tom. You sound like me when I look for my words. So you have been looking for too many of my videos.
It's your fault. Okay. It's your fault. Yeah. Okay, the Science Enthusiast. I don't know anything about them. I just heard about them recently, and I happened upon a couple of their podcasts today that related to this. And in one of them, they interviewed Thomas Smith, And this is before, well, obviously before MythCon. It was about a week ago, and he at that point was just, oh, he was very angry at Sargon and all the crap that Sargon was going, stood for, had said, meant, was, how he stood, what he did to the atheist movement, to the skeptic movement. I personally am a person very proud to call myself skeptical of, in the more Platonic, almost Platonic sense of it's a value and it's ideal to strive toward, to try to support the things you believe by figuring out what's the truth and what's not the truth, and not to, well, anyway, going on from there. Is after the interview with Thomas, the podcast hosts were talking, and they mentioned that they had interviewed Shermer and in a separate interview, they interviewed Sean and Brian of Mythicist Milwaukee, and they said all three of them, unbidden, at the end of the podcast, when there wasn't any time to really get into it, all three of them individually brought up the fact they thought institutional racism did not exist in the United States. So that, to me, that tells you a little bit about what they know, where they stand, what their privilege blinds them to, and a little bit about their character. Science Enthusiast also interviewed Sean and Brian last weekend, and I was going to listen to that one, and then I said, okay, everybody, ears perked up, because I'm going to say it again. I said, fuck it, because I was not going to listen to these assholes one more time after hearing them several times. I listened all through Callie's interview with them twice to make sure I wasn't being uncharitable to them. And I wasn't. I was being way too charitable to think that they might be something good to them. And going back, I guess, this is scattered, I'm sorry, but going back to Callie's interview, they kept talking about Sargon as an entertainer, and Sean and Greg as entertainers, June and Greg as entertainers, and that they were being brought in to entertain the audience. And I was thinking, think of all the people that have been speakers, featured speakers at atheist conferences in the past. As problematic as some of them have been in other ways, you get people like Dawkins and Hitchens and all these other people that have been there. Problematic in some ways, but certainly not as unskeptical and as interested in drama and bringing in the filth of the alt-right and alt-right as these people are. And I just did I mention shit show before? I think I might have.
You did say shit show, yes.
Yeah. See, I'm just sweary as anything today. Gosh darn it! I am so flipping angry. Yeah, I may swear again. I don't know if I get really peeved or pedoed. I looked at that 7-minute video by one of Sargon's fans that you linked to, Kristi.
Can you give a little background on that and then describe what happened and then analyze it?
I can tell you what I saw, and basically it was Sargon was And the video, by the way, is filmed sideways. So, you know, you either break your neck or you just get used to being disoriented watching the fucker. So you did it again. And the what was going on was the
Swear jar.
oh man. If I keep doing this, I'm going to be emptying out that swear jar. You take out $1 every time you swear, isn't that it?
Yeah, that's how it works. That's how it works.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to have pin money for a month after this one. But the video was titled something like Thomas Smith sends his goons to accost Sargon. After the interview, you know, they're having drinks, and everybody's talking, and the video cuts in when Sargon was talking to somebody who was called a goon that had been sent by Thomas Smith to harass Carl. And they were, you know, there were people chatting back and forth. You know, the Sargon and this guy were chatting back and forth, and the camera was so jacked up you couldn't really see who was talking until about a minute or minute and a half into it. And when you finally saw who it was Tom of Tom and Cecil of the Cognitive Dissonance podcast. And if any of you know Tom from Tom and Cecil, he is assertive, maybe aggressive, but he's not unreasonable. And he is unfailingly on the right side of things from social justice point of view, from, you know, issues of women's rights and civil rights and things like that. And what he was doing was pretty much mirroring Sargon and just holding Sargon's feet to the fire about things Sargon was saying. He was saying, you know, show me what you're talking about. You know, help me understand. I may be being charitable to Tom about this, but basically he was not attacking Sargon in the sense of saying, you rotten son of a bitch, you know, that kind of stuff. He was just holding Sargon to account. And then the Mythicist Milwaukee, well, I don't know if they sent him in. I understand that Sargon may or may not have asked Tom to be removed. I don't think he did, but somehow the security came in and said, this is a private party, you have to leave. And I'm thinking, a private party for, you know, in a conference with Tom, who is, I'm assuming, a conference attendee, gets escorted out for standing up to Carl. And as the camera pans away from that scene to the back of the crowd, there's just a flash of this this long kind of ponytail hair, you know, hair thing on a guy, and it looks very much like Jeff Holiday behind Sargon, on Sargon's side. And if that is Jeff Holiday, then we're talking about, you know, birds of a feather. Mm. And if not, then I apologize to anybody who might be offended by that, although I don't apologize very much. But
you could be wrong. You could be wrong, but it looked like.
I could be wrong about that, but it looked like it. And I just cut a flash, but the hair and the profile, you know, the side profile looked to me like it was, and it would make sense that he would be there. So,
or it was his
anyway,
doppelganger. His twin.
Yeah, I understand German a little bit. I understand doppelganger. You don't have to patronize me, Kristi.
I said in German, be doppelganger.
Yeah, I just know of what doppelganger is because Magic the Gathering.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was, you know, that was that little bit you were talking about, and it was, I mean, that video you mentioned, and it was. When I'm backing up, zooming out a little bit, I think that's what's going to happen is the Sargonites are already claiming victory, are already claiming Thomas Smith was an abuser. You know, that he came in with an agenda and he was being evil when he should have been just interviewing. And I think Kristi's point is well taken. Thomas was put in a horrible situation because I think the intention of the conference in the beginning was just to have an interview, you know, a relatively friendly, maybe a little bit challenging interview with Sargon, but then they got so much flack, they had to have some way of saying, yeah, listen, we're gonna, you know, you should have people there so you can challenge them. And the only person that they had there that could possibly challenge him was Thomas, and he was not there originally in that capacity. So I think Kristi brings up something I hadn't thought of, but you're absolutely right. Thomas was in a hell of a position, and he and this is one more big fail on the part of the Mythicist Milwaukee assholes. Does asshole count? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, you get $1 for that too.
You actually can't say asshole on like a radio or television because it's describing a body part. So that's why on television on network television they say jackass instead of asshole. It's okay. The FCC is weird about that.
So maybe 50 cents or a quarter? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
We can negotiate.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Can I just say something before I fuck off to it, because I'm going to go now. I just want to say that there's someone in the chat earlier saying that it was an issue of free speech. Free speech was the most important thing ever, whatever. I wanted to say that the most important thing is the freedom of people to not have to be harassed, not Sargon's free speech. Please stop with that bullshit. The guy isn't deprived from his free speech. Nobody is going to put him to jail for what he says. People really have to stop with that. And that's all. And I'm going to say you goodbye all.
Okay, it was so good for you to come. Thank you. And your thoughts were very, very important. Thank you for contributing.
Good talking.
See you later.
Bye.
Yeah, so I follow Dusty Smith on Twitter, and I don't agree with everything Dusty says, but I'm just an American pragmatist. I mean, my politics are quite left, and I live in Europe where I enjoy social democracy very much, and I'd like to see more of it in the United States. But as a pragmatist, if somebody agrees with me, you know, and I see a potential place to ally, you know, if the Pope wants to work on poverty, you know, I'll step up to that. So Dusty said on Twitter that he was frustrated with Mythicist Milwaukee's MythCon because it was a bunch of people complaining about SJW's cultural Marxism under the guise of postmodernism, rather than talking about real issues that are facing America. And when these guys go on and say people aren't coming to the cons and that attendance is down, well, you know, you've got the resistance now. You have a whole lot of people who are keyed into opposing the Trump administration, and especially the religious agenda that we see being enacted through DeVos and Trump and others. So if they really wanted to tap into an energy that exists in the country that connects with the secular community, then doing a lot of stuff on exposing the way that Trump is trying to slide, you know, more taxpayer money over to religious schools and fund religious indoctrination that way would be a great topic. Other things that are going on in the Trump administration. So, you know, I don't want to start a list. I'll just give that one example. But he has a really...
If you started a list, we'd be here for a long time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
So, you know, this point is entirely valid. By focusing on ticket sales and sensationalism, they missed an opportunity to actually get people organized before the 2018 election by raising their awareness of what's going on and giving them an action plan going forward. How do we get more of the secular agenda enacted in 2018, given Trump is in the White House? How do we resist the actions of the state to divert taxpayer money into religions? For instance, Trump, again, you know, he rolled back the law, a rule that said that clergy can't do politics from the pulpit. You know, so these things are really important and key. And those people were not given a platform, so that Shuan Head, and again, I only saw a minute of it, it seemed to be her closing remarks, but she was on stage reading from a sheet of paper, like looking down, reading from it, swaying back and forth, looking like she was giving a book report. All right. Like that, is that really how you want?
Didn't prepare very well.
Like I said,
was really nervous.
Yeah. But then just get a podium, put your notes behind the podium and just read and refer to them that way. You don't, anyway. So yeah, there was a genuine discussions that were not had so that people could come to see Carl and cheer at the line, "I wouldn't even rape you."
All for entertainment.
Yeah.
All for entertainment. So anyway, Mariana, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't see what's entertaining about Carlos Swindon anyway, because he's a shouty man on the internet. What's entertaining about that?
He's a shock jock.
There's
That's
a
the
lot
appeal.
of
Yeah.
that want to, I guess, see that anger justified by somebody.
Yeah,
That's
it
what I'm
reaffirms.
guessing.
Yeah, it reaffirms a lot of their like personal held and ignorant beliefs that like, no, you're not. There's nothing wrong with you being a white cis young male and something like that. It's everyone else is oppressing you. You are oppressing that kind of bullshit. Okay, add $1 to the jar. Everyone, let's swear some more so we can fill up that tip jar, that swear jar, and give it to charity.
Kids today, I don't know, you and your mouths.
But I think, sorry, someone else, do you want to jump in? Also, Matthew's been kind of quiet, so. Oh, Mariana, you weren't done then? Okay.
The whole cultural Marxism thing, well, it was invented by the actual literal Nazis, and they called it Kulturbolschewismus, and they meant Jews, so I don't know if the people realize its anti-Semitic roots, but I'll just play Schrödinger's douchebag here and say everyone who uses cultural Marxist is probably an anti-Semite.
So I think they're reappropriating it.
I'm not sure. I would probably go with they're at least very ignorant.
Yeah.
I agree to that.
Yeah, I think you have to do a discount for American ignorance of European anything.
Oh, yeah.
Especially.
Yes.
Not even just European anything. You could just put anything there. Probably.
Just young.
Yeah,
Young people don't know about history. If it's like happened before they were born, it's just all completely nebulous and stuff like that. And unfortunately, many people are not interested in learning about history or learning about anything. That's the problem.
We're not a bright people.
As a species, we are.
As a nation.
Yeah, when people say, "Oh, there wasn't any problems before third wave feminism started," I'm like, well, feminism has been going on for 150 years, dude. It's not gone away. You just noticed it for the first time. That doesn't mean it just started.
Once you start noticing these feminist ideas on Tumblr, and then you think it's a problem. Jeez. And Tumblr is fine. I like Tumblr. Oh, another thing I want to mention before we go is apparently it's been brought up before in this hangout earlier, but I want to reiterate is the concerning thing is not just Carl, even though that is concerning. We spent a whole hour talking about him, and there's more to talk about him. But what's also concerning is just his fans. He has a large audience. He's grown and grown. He's now at over 700,000 subscribers, and it's the fans that can be the mass of them, the large number of them, and how they are not critical of Sargon, or once you are critical of Sargon, then everyone, not just the fans, but also other rational thinkers or YouTubers of the like, start to just gang on you and dogpile you. I mean, look at Spinosaurus Skin, look at Woolly Bumblebee, just for criticizing the thought leader of Sargon, they got basically ousted or something like that and kicked out. That was unfortunate, and that's the problem, I think.
Anyone else?
Yeah, that's how you know a community's skeptical, is when they kick out people who have dissenting voices.
Yeah, I think we have to be able to hold our own community to the same standards that we hold the Christians we critique. And if we can't get our facts right and we can't list our sources, we shouldn't take those claims seriously.
Let's be skeptical.
Skeptical, I think is better. That's
Yes,
it's not the right word. Skeptical.
Yes, you must educate yourselves.
All right, so I'll do a last call. Are there any points on your notes, Tom, that you wanted to bring up that you haven't had a chance yet, or any other one? Matthew, if you want to, maybe I can kick it over for any closing thoughts from you about how.
I like to hear from Matthew. He's been quiet.
Yeah. Maybe he went away from his computer. Busted.
Oh, he's swearing. It's and he's broke. I see. I understand that.
Yeah. So Tom, did you have anything else in your notes?
Oh, I have so much, but it sounds like we're trying to wrap up, and that's fine. It's I keep coming back to the to my first comment that it's a shit show, and the reason they brought in Sargon was 700,000. That's it, as far as I can see. He's got a large audience, and they thought they could tap that and bring that excitement to Mythicist Milwaukee, which I understand is a fairly small and a fairly new conference. And I think they were looking to get a big bump out of that. And so they brought in some big YouTubers and thought that they would get that kind of bump out of it. And they're getting, they sowed the wind, and they're reaping, I would hope, the whirlwind. And if it'll depend on what lesson they learn from this. If they learn the lesson not to listen to their critics, then they're going to have another one next year that's going to be even worse, and the community will be even more divided and torn apart along these political, social, cultural lines. And we'll have a harder time getting anything done as in secular, skeptical, shit.
To end on a profanity. I'm perfectly happy with splitting the atheist movement. I really am, because I would prefer it. This is like right now going abroad as an American and having my American accent and thinking, oh no, people might think I voted for Trump.
Mm-hmm.
I am a white woman, so I could be one of those Trump voters, and I want to be able to distinguish myself from, sorry, and Xavier, I'll just finish this up and kick it over to you. And I want to be able to distinguish myself from the alt-negative, the alt-light atheism, the white rationalists. I mean, I'm happy with seeing the atheist movement split so that we can focus on actually having an inclusive atheism instead of platforming and having to deal with these people. Like, fine, it's like Catholics and the Protestants. Just let's have a breakup. We will have mainstream atheism, and then we will have alt-light atheism. And at least then I can, in good conscience, associate myself with the movement and not worry that people are going to think that I worship shitlords. So, and Xavier, sorry, I cut you off to finish my point.
Oh, no, that's okay. Sorry if there's background noise. Is there any commentary or anything from some of the bigger names on the conference just happening?
I was just going to make that point, that this is only, within 24 hours, and a lot of us are going, because they didn't live stream it, we're going by people's eyewitness reports and some videotape and what people put on Twitter and how they characterized it or what they chose to share. There are going to be, I think, several reactions to this. I know the Faithless Feminist attended. I would be really surprised if she didn't have some sort of comment on what happened. She asked the first question, actually, of Thomas and Sargon. There was also other people I know who recorded the audio for their podcast that they were going to be doing. I would expect, I know PZ Myers put out a piece about this being a shit show. I would expect other pieces to follow, and I would hope, and this is my hope, honestly, going forward, Hamid Mehta, I would love for him to comment on this and take a stand in favor of an inclusive form of atheism in the United States. I would like to see Seth Andrews do a podcast on this. I'd like to see, you know, Matt Dillahunty. I think that this is the conversation we need to be having. And if there was, I can't remember now. There's a guy he's a smaller channel, Louis Pascal, I want to say. He said he heard Seth on a podcast talking about free speech and that Seth wanted to disassociate from the conference. And basically his position was sort of the Hitchens position of, I don't want to have to tell people what they should be able to hear. And I think that that's fine if you're in a democracy where everybody is committed to the same values. But when you're dealing with language that is going to drive victims of sexual assault and rape out of your movement, if you've got people who don't feel like they can come to your conferences because the people on stage have spouted forms of race realism, then it's not enough to just say, you guys go over there and have your conversation. We actually have to define who we are, or they will define us. And so just dropping out is not enough. It's time to speak out, and it's time to speak up and say what our values are. Say we support feminism's goals. Say we support the goals of Black Lives Matter, that we don't think that there should be, you know, the militarized, if you think of that's important to human freedom and humanism, say that. And I think we need to say that. And I'm hoping that in reaction to what people saw on that stage, people will say that. So I guess it's a little bit sort of opening up the whole atheism plus debate again, but really I just see it as, are we going to be inclusionary in our movement and make people feel welcome, or is it going to stay the exclusive or the majority property of you know, cis white men who dismiss other people's oppression? That is our crisis of morality in our movement right now, and I know where I stand, and I would like to see other people vocally state where they stand. That got a bit more preachy than I planned, but
On the topic of
people
free
are
speech,
going to take the part where you said it's okay to have freedom of speech if you share the same values. They're going to take that out of context.
yeah, the free speech warriors. And let's all remember ContraPoints' two-part videos on free speech. If you are defending one form of speech, like what we classify as hate speech and stuff like that, then you're not a free speech absolutist. You chose a side. You cannot have absolute free speech freedom or freedom from consequences of free speech. And so you chose a side, and if you chose to defend hate speech, you chose, in my opinion, you chose the wrong side. No, not my opinion. It's a fact. You chose the wrong side. I'll say it like that. Free speech is stupid.
You know, I live in countries. Well, you know, I've lived in the UK and in Germany. Both countries have hate speech laws, and they are restricted and they are applied to. I mean, we had a big discussion about this in the Hangout about the German election. You can survive in a country with hate speech laws and have freedom of speech. You know, that's being done all over in democracies across the world. So yeah, the two ideas aren't incompatible.
Yeah, that's the paradox of tolerance.
Also, you can't have perfectly free speech and still have free speech be a substantive right, because the speech of one group can override the speech of another group.
Yeah, exactly.
At least substantively, not theoretically, but substantively it can.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you could just, you know, you can't have people walking around, you know, I don't think, calling for treason against the United States and violent, you know, I don't think you can, and that to me, when you're saying we need to round up American citizens and take them out of the country, that is, that goes against the very principles of our democracy. And that's outside of that, you know, I disagree with David Frum. I disagree with Charlie Sykes. I disagree with George Will. I disagree, you know, with Rush Limbaugh. But Rush Limbaugh is, you know, he's not talking about attacking fundamental freedoms in the United States based on race and based on bad science and basically bigotry and hate. You know, he talks about those, he is a bigot and he does talk about hate, but what he does, you know, he's talking about doing it through the legislative process where you can be challenged and debated. And if you're being forced by gunpoint out of your home, there's no debate there, you know, and calling for that. I don't know how you can tolerate that. And because what if, you know, we're seeing now with Roy Moore, getting elected in Alabama, and Steve Bannon now coming out as sort of the head of the alt-right. He wants to break this sort of inside breakaway party within the Republican Party. Roy Moore got chastised for putting up the 10 Commandments and for trying to not enforce the Supreme Court's decision on marriage equality. He's a theocrat. And these guys are getting elected, you know, and they're looking at Tennessee next because is it Corker who's decided he's retired? And Steve Bannon, as him as leader, and Breitbart in that wing, they come out, they're openly alt-right. They say they are. He said they're the platform for the alt-right, and they want to get people elected. So yeah, this is a serious question, and the paradox of tolerance is the thing that we need to be discussing, because I know Americans love their First Amendment. There's a lot of free speech absolutism, but it's simply, if you look at countries where there are hate speech laws and the way that they are defined and enforced and debated and discussed and sometimes overturned, as I think there have been some cases mentioned in Australia and other places, Canada, there's a process there. But the whole point of it comes back to what Marianne was saying about people's freedom to live without fear in their own country, that another group is going to, you know, harass them out of that place or intimidate them or even be violent to them. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling now. So did somebody else want to come in? And by the way, sorry, before I say anything, Matthew said that he just didn't have much to add and that he appreciates everybody else's points. He's just a silent listener in our Hangout. He's the lurker. The lurker.
Well, that way he doesn't have to add to the swear jar for swearing. Fuck. There I go again. No reason to.
Oh, so much for monetizing this video.
Oh, like that was, you were going to do that? Oh,
right.
that would have been enough.
But we're talking about politics. Politics is not monetizable on YouTube, just in general.
I get, you know, my Patreon Hangout announcement video got demonetized as not being user-friendly. I just think that they do it randomly. I just think that they're doing it to decrease the amount of ads put on so they don't have to pay so much out. They sort of like create a pipeline of, you know, smaller channels that don't get as many views, and they've used that 1,000 view cutoff to filter up higher channels so they get more ad revenue, you know, in places they like. But anyway, that's my conspiracy theory. I had a good rant. I feel better for this. I don't know if anybody else feels like they got some thoughts in their heads out, but I know I did.
I think I feel better, yeah.
Yeah.
Therapy. We'll stop calling it Hangouts. We'll just call it group therapy.
I'm all for that.
Yeah, there's been a couple of those lately, haven't there?
Well, everyone, if you enjoyed this Hangout and you would like to join in the future, all you have to do is become a patron for as little as $1 a month. And also, another thing that we've kind of done here sort of ad hoc, but I think I'm going to make sort of a formal thing, is we've got a Facebook group where we message each other sort of throughout the month and we discuss the dates and other things. And if you are a patron and you want to join that conversation, then yeah, that's another way that you can sort of be rewarded for your support and have a bit more contact with me throughout the month. So from my guests, then all that's left to be said is that I have been Kristi. You guys have been awesome. Thanks for your time and attention listening to this Hangout. And I will just say bye from me and then bye from the guests. Say goodbye, guests.
Okay.
Goodbye, guests.
Goodbye, Kristi.
Bye, everybody.